All right, well, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate you coming. We're really excited to share with you today what we've found. The inception of Quantify was over 3 years ago now, with this whole discovery of industrial IoT and the power that it can have in Canada's manufacturing world. And in that 3 years, we've developed some very powerful tools, and we've now implemented them in many manufacturing facilities in Canada. And we've immediately seen an incredible impact. It's new technology. It's super impactful. We're having some incredible ROIs and, more importantly, some great employee engagement. So we figured it was time to really share what we've been doing and reach out to our community, to potential clients that have been interested in this, but also really show how our partners are working together and really show you the entire package that we've created. So throughout this presentation, we'll spend a little bit of time on who we are, but we really want this to be an educational sort of webinar. So there's going to be two major parts. The first one's going to be Tom giving you an in-depth tour of our dashboard and the actual software and data that our clients and partners interact with every day. And then following that, I'm going to show you 6 or 8 specific case studies and just show you how impactful this technology is. And how it's being used in the real world. So that's why we titled this The Impact of Industrial IoT, because we really see it coming into its own and really proving its worth out there in the field. So as a company, Quantify Environmental, we didn't focus on creating hardware per se or software. There's some really great companies out there producing some really high quality hardware and software. But we did really find a niche in integrating that. So there wasn't a lot of capacity out in the field for taking that great hardware and sensors, taking the software and getting them to communicate effectively. So that's the place we hold in the market, is getting this equipment in factories and up and running, but more importantly, then interacting with that company, with that team who know their plant the best, and using that data to truly drive some projects forward and see some implementation. So once we do that, we see that the real-time visibility, process and utility use, once you see it at a minute-by-minute scale, you're then going to see some real action happening at those facilities. And the reason we do this is because it makes Canadian companies, or we'd like to spread out more internationally, but at this time we're seeing Canadian companies becoming truly that much more competitive and, of course, more profitable. We're also seeing a very quick adaptation of ESG goals and tracking those. But we're also seeing a really strong example of communication within a team. We're creating very valuable data sets. If you want to call that the currency, we're seeing that many different people in many different departments at a factory or a company will use that. So whether it's finance looking and comparing their utility bills to what they're receiving only monthly at this time, or right down to the production floor where an individual, an operator is controlling a ball valve and they're seeing that flow right away. All that data is more or less the same. It's on the same dashboard, but so many different people at the facility can use it in their own ways. So, we work in many different types of industries. And I know today, looking at our list of guests, we're very honored that you've shown up to dedicate an hour to come to this. We know that you're all coming from different areas, whether it be from cities or regions representing cities, or from individual companies. We hope that you take away something from this presentation that you can think, oh yeah, I've never really seen the data from that machine or from this utility stream, and I really see an application here. As you'll see here with our some of our current clients, we work in food and beverage, we work in the automotive industry, pharmaceutical, chemicals. The reality is, once you get that behind that machine room door or any utility stream, it's all the same equipment. It all needs to be monitored. So the applicability is quite broad. So this is typically what we see at a facility, a lot of analog, older equipment, whether it's natural gas and boilers, obviously electrical throughout a facility. All of this is producing data or consuming utilities, and this is exactly what we want to see. So this is one of our base stations set up, obviously wireless, receiving radio signals, processing that data, and then sending it to the cloud for you to visualize. That's kind of on the hardware side, which I will dive into it a little bit more, but we just want to show you in a video format and an actual plant of what this stuff actually looks like. So here's another view of that hardware ecosystem, because we are an integrator, turnkey solution installer of the sensors themselves. and of course, also the software side, but then the implementation of any sort of project. So here's a quick view of what that hardware ecosystem looks like. At the bottom of that pyramid, you can stretch that out to 50 or 100 sensors. We typically like to initially look at water main at major facilities, water going into major users, in this case being a boiler feed or a cooling tower. We certainly want to look at large motors like air compressors and whatnot. So those sensors are being affixed to those devices, producing that wireless data, and then sending by 900 megahertz radio wave through that facility to that one base station that you just saw in that video. The real power here is most of our sensors are non-invasive, battery powered, and wirelessly communicating that data to that edge computer and base station. And we've done multiple tests throughout many different facilities with a lot of different walls and what have you. And we're getting 500, 600, 700 outside, up to 2K range of that data. So if you're thinking of your own facility and just the configuration of it, we really think that we've really come to the forefront with a good solution that you can pull data from all areas of your facility. So Tom will be talking more about the dashboard specifically. So I'm going to touch on it a bit now, and then he's going to do a deep dive afterwards. But the whole idea and really the reason for Quantify is, we did see some IoT in the industry, but maybe one plant manager had one dashboard for electricity and nothing else. Or, one finance personnel was looking at water or Enbridge natural gas on one dashboard, but wasn't able to see their electricity feed. As we know, if you even consider a boiler, it's constantly consuming chemical, water, natural gas, and electricity. We thought, well, we should just have one dashboard where you can see all those metrics in one easy to read spot. So that's the real value of bringing this dashboard forward. The other big thing is it's browser-based. So all those pieces of hardware at the bottom there, whether you have a phone, tablet, and like Tom will mention during his presentation, even a screen in a boardroom, we want this data to be democratized, easily accessible, and constantly there. So we're able to achieve that with this software. So the question is, what are the benefits of IoT and how is it different from existing systems? I'm not going to read all of this. This is recorded, so you can look at it later. But it's this whole idea of resource utilization. We are seeing that these major factories, we can very quickly shave off 10% savings on all their utility streams simply by looking at it on a minute-by-minute scale. From that, you can do benchmarking. So what are our baselines now? If we put in this new piece of machinery, what are we going to save? The predictive maintenance part is really cool. A lot of factories are working on preventative maintenance. So at 200 hours, we'll take a look at this machine. Well, if we're looking at vibration, temperature, and amp logging on a major motor, minute by minute, we'll be able to see if it's laboring after maybe only 25 hours since its last use. So we can predictively get ahead of a breakdown. Obviously, efficient production, behavioral changes are really significant. That's actually one really cool kind of result we see from our work. We're not people, or we're not a company that helps with employment, but we have seen that once we get these systems in place, new employees get super engaged, but even more importantly, employees who have been there for 15, 20 years, a new light bulb turns on. They get reinvigorated, rejuvenated with this data because they're directly seeing the impact they're having by watching something minute by minute, changing a process and seeing huge savings. So the behavioral changes are really big. And when it comes to change management, this is a really big tool to use. And then, of course, we're always asked about, well, what about this AI revolution? I was joking with Tom yesterday. I was at a conference, and this is Industrial IoT is also called Industry 4.0. I was at a conference the other week, and someone said, well, we're actually at Industry 5.0. And I said, well, come on, steam engine had its age in the sun for nearly 100 years, and Industry 4.0 only lasted for a few years. What's 5.0? And he made an interesting point. It's this whole idea of what we're providing with industrial IoT, but now you're laying on this AI. And we're starting to hear this from clients, but the reality is AI's food is real-time digitized data. And if you're running a boiler or a cooling tower or anything at your plant, any data stream that's paper-based, writing it down with a pen, or no data at all, you simply can't use AI. So you're missing out on this incredibly new, powerful tool that actually made the image we have there on the screen. We thought that was kind of an interesting combination of everything. But if you want to get into the AI world and start leveraging it the way you might be in your personal life and using it at your business, you need the digital data that this system produces to create that. So let's just take a step back and kind of dwell on that point of what we're seeing in factories right now, and why we see such an opportunity for this. The unfortunate reality is there's very little visibility in the plants we go into. I've been visiting manufacturing facilities and working in them for almost a decade now. It's very rare I see any sort of digital data or any sort of predictive maintenance based on real-time data. We're also seeing that there's little capacity. If I can talk to a plant manager or a CEO for more than 5 minutes without their cell phone going off, that's a big win. We want to be able to provide that horsepower to your team to realize this data. Then it's the internal expertise. It's a very new field, very new industry. To integrate, install the hardware, get it working up as software on the dashboard, takes a lot of time and effort. And so we want to provide that expertise to these facilities or companies. This is what we typically see. So, we have a $1 million asset behind this boiler makeup sheet written down with pen, obviously very prone to error. Some of those numbers I can't even read. But the more important part is no one's interacting with this data. It's not trending. You can't see baseline flows that you could eliminate. So some real issues here. This has to be done for legal reasons. This reporting has to be done. So if we're already in that mindset where we have to produce this, then why not digitize it so everyone can see it? When we move to other facilities, we're seeing that there's analog dials everywhere. And I don't want to mention any of the company names here. Some of them are Fortune 500, but we're having super old analog data being produced that is controlling multi-million-dollar assets, and by a simple reconfiguration with hardware, with our sensors, we can digitize all this and it all can be viewed remotely. So very applicable to any location. So what's the industry look like? Well, we're really at the forefront of industry in Industry IoT and Industry 4.0. We're seeing there, just from 2019 to 2025, a massive growth in this. The hardware and software has really come into its own. The R&D is over, and we're starting to implement this and seeing some real changes immediately. So we see it mostly in the manufacturing operations. That's where we're seeing the biggest uptake, and that's where we see the most exciting applications that we want to share with you today. So that's kind of the background, where we stand as a company and where Industry 4.0 is right now. And to really prove the power of this, I'm going to stop sharing, throw this over to Tom, and he's going to give you a deep dive into our dashboard that our clients are working with every day.
Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen here. And we'll just kick it off with welcoming you all to our IoT dashboard here. So this is a live dashboard now, and I'm very excited to showcase with all of you this fully customizable, versatile, and modern approach to data collection and visualization. It's both for real-time, but also historical insights into your operations. The first thing you'll notice is this is browser-based. It works on all operating systems, all modern browsers, and it's mobile friendly. So it looks great on your tablet, your phone, your laptop, or like Dave mentioned, even on maybe a screen in the break room or lunchroom in your facility. And it's great for people working on the go, working remotely. Now, maybe that maintenance engineer is off sick, but he needs to still kind of be aware of what's going on in the facility. They can log in on their laptop and see all the data coming in real time. What we're going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes on is some of the main features of our dashboard, including the data visualization, things like statistics, alerts, automated reports. And just to be clear, what you're seeing on this specific dashboard, this is just kind of open source weather data for demonstration purposes, but I will show a live dashboard for one of our clients at the end of my portion. So first and foremost, our job as integrators and installers is we work with the clients to select the proper data, the devices, the hardware. We integrate that with our edge computers. We get that all in the cloud. We can also pull data in from existing data sets via an API. So our goal is to get that data online and streaming in the background with as many variables as we need. And then after that, we start building the dashboard. And so if you've never used a dashboard, it's basically like a homepage, right? You access on your browser, you put your username and password, and then you're off to the races. Most of our clients start with one kind of general dashboard, high level. You just scroll down and you can see all the information that you want. But then we can make additional dashboards if we want very granular insights. For example, you might have a large piece of equipment like an air compressor that you want to have maybe 20 different variables you're measuring, and you want to have a very in-depth, detailed look at that. We can build the dashboard for that. We can also build dashboards that are as simple as complex as we want. We have a dashboard that a client uses to manually enter specific measurements in the field, but they want to graph that and get alerts on that real time. So, every project is different, every client is different, and we really work with our clients to make sure that we build something that they want to use. And that's very important. A lot of these kind of other competitors have big limitations on what their software can do. Even things like colors, you can't choose and customize. And whereas our system is fully customizable, everything from the fonts, the colors, the branding, down to the data and how we display it. So I'll turn my focus to the dashboard here. The first thing you'll notice is our dashboards are quite dynamic here. There's a little drop down here where I can select different ranges. So as the data is coming in the background, we're storing that for up to 2 years. And I can quickly switch between, for example, the last 24 hours. And if I scroll down, that data loads in for the last 24 hours. But if I go to the last 7 days, all of a sudden, it's now showing me the last 7 days. So that's really cool because it allows me to focus on the real-time insights, as also look at longer-term trends. Just skipping ahead a bit, most of our kind of widgets that look like graphs have these gray bars at the bottom. That allows us to zoom in without affecting other graphs in the area. And so maybe I see an interesting piece of data here or a trend that I'm not liking. I want to know what's going on. I can zoom in and play with that and really kind of hone in on the specific dates and times that I'm interested in. So we can also make multi-device dashboards. So for example, if you have 10 thermocouples that are all collecting the same information deployed in your facility, but you don't want to have 10 different dashboards, we can have a drop down here where you just select thermocouple 1 or temperature sensor 1, and it populates the rest of those graphs. And you can kind of flip-flop between the different sensors that way. So again, as simple, as complex as you'd want it to be. So now let's kind of delve into all the different widgets. Widgets are kind of the little blocks you see on this web page. We have a lot in our quiver to choose from, a lot of tools in our toolbox. So we can start with basic things like just text and headers. So for example, we want to create sections or add additional context for the viewer. We can add that in, customize however we want. We can also go a step further and add HTML code in here. So in this case, we've put in buttons where our client can immediately submit a support ticket, request a new user, email us, or go to our Calendly and meet with us. So they don't have to leave the page. It's all right there. And again, we can integrate whatever we want directly in here, just like any other web page. But moving on to the kind of actual data, we typically start with a little device summary where we have just a text view of all the data coming in, or the most important variables rather, and their last values, and that's hyperlinked. So if we want to go into the exact device, we can do that and further refine our search. But again, this is just kind of a nice device summary that we have. This is a cool widget here. It's a map widget, kind of looks like Google Maps. It's actually using a Google Maps interface, but we overlay that with the locations of our different sensors. So this is great for multi-site operations, where maybe you have 5, 6, 7 sites, like some of our clients do across Canada, and you as the general manager or the facilities manager or director want to click in and just see the temperatures of all your buildings or more critical equipment. We can do that. We can see here that we're collecting weather data in Montreal and all the variables are there. We have a number of sensors here in Guelph. So we can kind of zoom in and pop in and say, oh, we have 3 sensors here. And look, we have a AC current sensor. We have another sensor. We have an edge computer. So again, we can change the colors, the icons. We can show the numbers on here. Very intuitive to use and great for kind of larger multi-site operations. Going further down here, you can see that we have images we can just place. So this isn't just, again, for context, just for user visibility. Perhaps you have 3 different types of similar equipment with very similar names, but they all look different, and you're a visual person, your team wants to see what they're looking at. We can take pictures, just upload them for context, and that's great for kind of sharing information with other staff that might not be so aware of exactly the the make or model or serial number of the device you're looking at. We can have things like temperature widgets, and we can color code these. So maybe if it exceeds a certain temperature, it turns red, but normally it's black or green. Again, visual aids for quick references. And what I'll show you here is we can move these widgets around very easily. So whether that's us doing that or the client can get permissions to do that, customizing these requires no code or very little code in most instances. We're just dragging and dropping and selecting. So again, that's a nice simple feature of our dashboard. We have a metric widget here, as you can see, just shows us a number. So in this case, we're collecting humidity data. And what's really cool is we can do quickly do statistics and hard code them into our dashboard. So for example, if I want to see the last value reported by the sensor, I just click that button and it tells me the last value reported, a few minutes ago. If I want to go and say, hey, I want to see the average over the last 7 days, I can do that. And now this is the average. And so a lot of our widgets have these options. We can sum up stuff, we can count, we can do minimums. And once it's in there, you don't have to ever do it again. So gone are the days where you're doing, pivot tables and formulas on CSV files in Excel. This is all live and continuously updated. We can do gauges like these runtime gauges, again, fully customizable. In this case, we want to know how long a piece of equipment is running. So we can convert the amps that we're using into a time. When it's on above a certain amperage, we can say it's on and count that time. Great for preventative or predictive maintenance and just logging how many hours you're using and how many hours it should run. Maybe you have a piece of equipment that's supposed to run for 4 hours and is run for 8 today. You'll see that right there. Tank level, another common widget. A lot of facilities have tanks. And so we're able to code that in and with an ultrasonic sensor, for example, and show those tank levels. We have these kind of more standard line graphs, line charts. This one's a double axis, temperature and humidity. We can click in and play with this data and isolate certain variables. Again, we can zoom in here and do that. So that's quite straightforward. Again, all the colors, all the legends, all the scales are fully customizable. We can show that data a number of different ways, like this heat map, which is one of my favorite widgets. In this case, we have days of the week on the left side, hours on top, and we can see a heat map. And these could be the raw values, could be the averages, the minimums, the maximums. So you can quite clearly see longer term patterns over the week. We have one for the month, where basically you'll be able to see if there's any issues during a shift. If you're expecting a piece of equipment to run 9 to 5 and you see a few blips in here, you'll be able to see that very quickly without having to do any kind of analysis on a table. And then we can also have bar charts. In this case, we're summing up data for water consumption purposes. So we're measuring flow at a water meter, we're converting that to water consumption, and we're continuously summing that up for the day. And we can trend that over time to see if it's working as intended. For people that want kind of more conventional SCADA type visualizations, we have a full SCADA widget we can customize, and we can have dynamic information on temperatures, pressures, flows, whether a machine is on or off. So again, if you're an engineer and you kind of like this way of viewing things, we can do that. And we can even integrate cameras. Most plants have cameras somewhere in the facility, and maybe some are for security and awareness, maybe some are for production or engineering purposes. If you have a camera feed, we can display that alongside your temperature or your other kind of sensors that you're measuring, and again, allows that for that additional context and monitoring. So you're not having to switch between 5-6 dashboards. This is a centralized universal dashboard. So I hope that shows you that, how powerful and universal this is. And I just wanted to show you that in any one of our widgets, for example, we can export the data into a CSV file and send it via an email. We can share this. If I click share, I can generate a link, send that to a consultant or contractor. And now they don't need to log into the dashboard. They have a real-time view of that widget for whatever purposes they need. And I can remove that link for security purposes whenever I want after the fact. And I can also embed that, whether that's in an internal website or intranet or SharePoint. Maybe you want to gamify two different kind of shifts or parts of your facility. We can put that on a dashboard. And again, you don't have to sign into the dashboard. You just quickly share that information. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention here is this is what the back end of our devices looks like. So one device might report a dozen, 2 dozen different variables. In this case, we're collecting amps for a air compressor. But these you see that we can do synthetic variables where we apply math or code to it. And if we, for example, know the voltage and the phases, we can convert amps to kilowatt hours. We can apply cost to that. We can talk about CO2 emissions and run times. So from one variable, amps, we can create synthetic variables and then plot those and act on those accordingly. I wanted to show here events very quickly. So this is very powerful. Any data that we're collecting or manipulating, we can create an event, an actionable event. In this case, for example, we want to know when our temperature exceeds 25 degrees for 20 minutes. So that's our trigger. We take our action. In this case, we want to send an email with a subject and a custom message. Maybe this is an important trigger, or alert. We want to repeat that action twice every 30 minutes if that condition is true. And that's going to inform our team about an issue that's happening. And when it's back to normal, we also want to know about it. So we would send that email, and then that would just continue to run. But we can also send things like texts, voice calls, Slack messages. So we can have different alerts for different groups of people at different times. Maybe you don't want to be bothered after hours. We can add active windows. And it really, again, it takes this kind of active ability to passively monitor your systems and get alerted in real time if something's not working. And then, of course, we can also do automated reports. So these are automated PDFs. We can email to you whenever you want, daily, weekly, monthly, and we can add whatever widgets, whatever data you want. So, for example, you're a maintenance engineer and you want to have a report show up in your inbox at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. every morning, showing the previous week's worth of data. That'll show up. You're ready for your morning meeting. We can add in pictures and text and whatever. You can circulate it with your colleagues. You don't have to take that time to manipulate the data. It's all automated. It's all working for you in the background. So I hope that that kind of helps. And then I just wanted to show here very quickly a real-time dashboard. So this is a client's dashboard that we've built. In this case, they're a larger kind of warehouse. They want to optimize their HVAC system. So we deployed a bunch of thermocouples everywhere. So we see here that we have a floor one, we have a ceiling temperature, we have the temperature difference. We're trending that over time. We've overlaid the Guelph temperature outdoors in this light gray. Hopefully you can see it. And again, I can play with that data as I see fit. We have another temperature thermocouple, and we're doing some kind of testing here, as you can see. So this is real time. And we're also tracking their water main. So we can see their water use, their 7-day moving average trend that we've coded in, and even their flow. So we can look at their flows and say, hey, if it's 4 a.m. and there's some water flowing, why is that water flowing? That's costing about $10,000 a year. Is there a valve that can be replaced? Is there a solenoid that's broken? And we can do statistics like how much water they used, last 24 hours, last week, this month, last month. Apply cost to that. And then again, air compressors, we can see that their compressors are running for 9 hours this day, 3.5 hours this day. We see their raw amp usage. We're summing up their runtime, and we're even applying things, statistics like how much time did they save since we've implemented changes? How much energy and money did they save on one air compressor? And how many carbon emissions they save? So in this example, this client paid for the whole project with this one sensor, and are continuing to see the results of their immediate action because they're able to immediately see the data come in. So I know that's a lot to take in, but there's a lot to showcase. So I hope that was pretty good. And of course, I'll be happy to answer questions at the end should they come up. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Good stuff. So I'm going to jump back onto the screen here and show you guys some applications. You can see that now? Excellent.
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. So we're into chapter 3 here. We're going to wrap up this webinar. We want to make sure you guys have all the information you need going forward. To me, this is the most exciting part of the webinar because we're showing you what this is actually doing in the real world, the actual savings it's providing. We always say implementing these pieces of hardware and software, they're kind of a means to an end. If you're a company that you just want visibility, well, we've shown you that. But if you actually want to change the way your processes are working and get some ROIs and really do some change management with operations, that's the second part. That's the really juicy part of these projects. And that's what I'm going to show you some case studies on to see how this is actually changing the way people are operating their facilities because of this data. So you've got a bit of information now of the hardware, how we put it in. Tom's giving you a nice view of the software and how it represents the data. I want to show you our real value add as Quantify, and that's getting into the facility, working with the team month by month, and implementing these projects and seeing the impact and actually seeing it on the trend line. It's really, really exciting. So this one here, this case study, this is our first project we did. This is at a pharmaceutical facility. And with one sensor, we put it on their water main. And you can see here, if we orient ourselves here, bottom axis is time. So up until we had been there, or before we'd even been there, they had this baseline flow of about 30, 35 liters a minute all the time. No one could see this happening. It was occurring in a closed pipe. Maintenance manager is busy doing other things. They didn't realize they were hemorrhaging or in reality bleeding this money down the drain because no one could see it. So we put that hardware sensor in place. We started seeing it on the software. And I then went in, toured the facility, put some time and effort into it, and chased down where this water was coming from, and it ended up being a failed solenoid valve. It's always interesting, our relationships with clients, because they don't know what they don't know. We put this technology in place, we start working with them, and they almost start to feel embarrassed, like, oh man, I didn't know that was occurring. And it's no one's fault. That's just the reality. These facilities are big, they're consuming a lot. And every place we go to, we find something like this. It's our home run that we find right off the bat, whether it's electrical consumption on a big motor or any other sort of larger users in the facility. So in this case, it was a broken solenoid. It was providing too much water to their trap seals. We found that solenoid. We replaced it for $600 with the plumber. And this is a really exciting part. You can see exactly when we've replaced it. It was a Friday afternoon in late July of 2022. And since that date, we haven't seen that issue anymore. This is the real power of industrial IoT is, of course, we leave these sensors in place. And what Tom just showed you on the coding side, we put an alert in place. So if this ever happens again, which it will, because solenoid valves are designed to fail open, they're going to get an alert right away. So they won't have another whole year of this baseline flow that they don't see. They'll be immediately told what's happening. Beyond that, we started to see some other really cool things at the facility. So this herringbone structure here, that was their irrigation water turning on. So that opened up a whole other can of worms. They went and talked to the landlord and said, is this water that we have to pay for to irrigate a small lawn? It's costing us, we could quantify all this, added up to about $8,000 a year in water to irrigate. So that was a different conversation. But the real takeaway here is eliminating that baseline flow and monitoring it since then. Another amazing project here, we worked on a facility, we've since rolled out multiple sensors throughout the facility, but, we're quite proud of this graph. I'm really excited to click the next button because you can see what we did with them. So if we orient ourselves here, this is about a year of water consumption or a year of data. This is cubic meters used per day. And we put the sensors in place, we started getting the data, we got this baseline trend here for about 3 or 4 months. Then this is where it really started to kick in. It's like, okay, let's highlight 3 or 4 opportunities at this facility where we can really cut down water use. Now let's start implementing them. How do we know we're doing a good job? Well, it's continuous data. So we're seeing that drop. We've actually dropped their water use by 50% at this facility. That equates to about $35,000 a year back of overhead that they were paying anyways, and now they've avoided that. The other really big takeaway from this is working with those cities and regions that sometimes provide funding for these projects. They need this data in order to give the funding. So like Tom was showing you with sharing that data, We do a click share, boom. City now has it. They can apply their funding metrics, and then the end client gets their check so they can start buying the capital investments to achieve these water reduction savings. So really cool project there. That was facility-wide. Now let's narrow down on one particular water user. So now we have a boiler that's consuming water, chemical, natural gas every minute of every day, all through the year. We know now, working with this facility, they know their facility best. They know how it operates. We've given them the unprecedented visibility of how these things are operating. So we had a meeting with the operator, the manager, and the boiler company. And we said, these boilers are running all the time. Is there any way that we can just turn them off when they're not being used? Can we, shut them off on at least the weekends? And sure enough, they did that. This particular project's near and dear to my heart. It truly is an ESG project because it's near here. I go on hikes in the woods around this factory, and I knew every weekend nothing was happening there, but those boiler stacks were running, emitting GHGs all the time. When we implemented this, now I go for walks in that area, I can see that those boilers are off. I know that they're not unnecessarily burning natural gas. I know they're not unnecessarily using water, etc. So it's a really big win for everyone. They've saved water, chemical, natural gas going to that boiler every weekend, which equates to tens of thousands of dollars a year. And they're able to track that project and truly monitor it. Here's another one, cooling tower optimization. So we put sensors on the cooling tower makeup. What sort of opportunities can we find here? So this one, it's critical to orient ourselves on this timeline here. We're starting in June, we're ending in September. So a cooling tower is very dependent on weather data, which we're able to bring in as well to consider. Typically, as the months get hotter, the cooling tower water use increases. We're really excited to see this graph next year to do baseline to future. But we saw here, even during the summer when it was getting hotter, we were actually day by day reducing the amount of water that cooling tower was using. We did that through, it was a list of about 9 or 10 different opportunities related to that cooling tower. But overall, we're having that drop. They're able to track that. And again, with this facility, they were able to lean on that funding to help with those capital projects. We then took the next step with this team, because they saw the power of this real-time data on the whole cooling tower system. And then they started saying, well, these cooling loops are going to 9 or 10 different presses. We want to now understand what is the minute by minute temperature and flow for each press. Well, because they already had that base station in place, it was rapid and easy to install extra sensors on particular presses and get those pieces of data and machinery up onto the dashboard. And now they're seeing that in real time. So it's now all becoming part of the ecosystem where they're truly able to monitor the whole facility. Again, the whole idea of layering data. This is a bakery where they're having wastewater issues. So we started off by putting a sensor on the water main. We're seeing some really cool visualization of their water use. We have our production stage here, sanitation at night, and then no water use, which is great. Low baseline flows on the weekend when no one's there. And that's repeating every day, production, sanitation, production, sanitation. They said, well, we want to understand our pH because we're getting dinged with fines because the pH is out of spec. So we went to their wastewater pit, put a pH sensor in there. It's now seeing minute by minute data. And the really neat thing is now we can overlap pH in their wastewater to water use. And so we can see that relationship. When sanitation starts, they dump a very high pH valued caustic onto their machinery to clean it. So pH goes way up. Then as you rinse, it goes down all through the day, up and down. So we're starting to see that relationship. We then shared this data with their subcontracted engineering firm that's redesigning their wastewater pit. And they now have all the real-time data and tracking to monitor that project. The last two will be on electricity. So here we had an air compressor running every minute of every day. Again, very common issue. This piece of equipment was in the very back room of the plant. No one goes back there. If you go pick up an air gun, you've got your air, so you don't worry about everything else. Well, when we put our amp logger on, we saw that air compressor was running every minute of every day full out. So we started, playing that game again of, do you truly need this on all the time, or can we start saving some runtime and some electricity and some GHG emissions? And they said, yeah, let's try shutting it off on a weekend. So again, we're tracking all this. We can see these projects in real time in the storyline. They turned it off on the weekend here. Came back on Monday. They didn't turn it off that Tuesday around just to see if it was okay to turn it off and on between shifts. But now we can clearly see off on the weekends, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday runtime, so on and so forth. So this was kind of opportunity one. Let's turn it off when we're not using it. This is where we like to work with our teams month by month and say, well, let's get it to the next level. How can we more optimize this air compressor operation even more? So then we started talking to the guys on the floor and said, what PSI do you need from the air compressor? And they said, well, only about 90 to 95 to operate these diaphragm pumps. We went back to the air compressor. It's trying to chase 125 PSI all the time. So just no cost, low cost, change that set point. And we were able to bring down electricity draw even more. This is the really exciting part, this tracking of all those opportunity and changes. This is the dashboard that the plant manager takes into the owner and says, look what I did over the last year. Look at the money I've saved you. Look at the runtime I've saved on this particular piece of equipment. This is the employee engagement part, where his track record can now be truly quantified and backed up with data, and of course, achieving ESG goals as well. Just to show you that this isn't a one-off, we actually went down the street to another facility, totally different type of factory, similar type of air compressor, and we replicated the exact same project there. So similar savings, similar impact, similar employee engagement, and really shows how repeatable this technology is and the power it has. So those are all of our case studies that we want to share with you today. There's a whole bunch more behind the door, and every day we're getting more and more of these. If you're starting to think, hey, I don't need to see water, I don't need to analyze a boiler, but you're thinking, you know what, there's this one refrigerated room, and if it goes above 0 degrees Celsius, everything stored in that room is destroyed. There's so many applications for this technology, and that's why we like that month-by-month meetings, because we want to hear from your team, where else can we get this sort of information to help us optimize production. We had a really interesting project about a month ago, where we're looking at electricity, water, all that good stuff. And then they said, well, we have this stormwater pit, and if the water raises in it too high, we get dinged by MOE. Can we put some sort of sensor in there? So absolutely, put in an electrical conductivity sensor. As soon as that water hits that high mark, immediately, 2 people on that team get a text. They go over and assess that storm drain. So there's really a myriad of applications. I put this list up here just so you can know the possibility of what can be monitored. And we love having those conversations and those interesting projects with your team to see what else you want to see. So that kind of wraps up our webinar for today. We really want to hear from the team out there and hear your questions. I'm going to leave this up for now, just so if you have any questions, you have a way to contact us. But for now, I'll stop talking and we'll start taking some questions. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your attendance.